So my name is Nicholas. I'm the person who has set up and is running turbozone.org, Ruff Cutz Radio, and we can talk about what that is. I'm having difficulty. There we go. Okay. So the agenda of this presentation, the main thing I want to do is just tell you about this radio station and in good faith let you know that if I'm telling the technology friends about my musician friends, I am also telling my musician friends about my technology friends. So I'm spreading the word about this here, but also please do know that I'm talking about Liquidsoap elsewhere. In the same vein as Alexis and Pierre, I think I want to offer ideas regarding alternative music distribution. There's been a seismic shift in my philosophy about music because of my experience with Liquidsoap. Something I intend to do today is to learn and explore other technologies and models. Learning much about, in particular, video is something I'd like to explore, and HLS. And then something else I wanted to do today is just to say thank you for all the hard work that goes into this project. I have benefited very greatly, as have my friends. So let's talk about turbozone.org. This is just a very small radio station. So in the beginning, some friends and I, we are working in a group called the Ruff Cutz Ethical Music Collective. And this is a big fancy name for a group of guys who like to hang out and, just hang out in a practice space and make rock and roll music. And we were in New Orleans. We were based in New Orleans. So what happens is we're in this place and we're making this music and we wind up with these MP3 files that we want to share with one another. Sometimes we have, pieces of recordings on Google Drive, or we're sending them to one another in text messages and, songs that are works in progress. Well, this can be very cumbersome on contemporary technology, right? The idea is that, everyone wants you streaming everything all the time. They don't want you to be playing your own MP3 files. There's sometimes a very difficult way to do this, especially if everybody's got different devices. So with that in mind, I just set up a simple Liquidsoap radio station. I've been using Liquidsoap for some time. But the idea is we just took all the MP3 files that we had, we dumped them into a directory, and then we just started playing them. And then very quickly, it was obvious that, you want to add a bumper, right? You were listening to turbozone.org, Ruff Cutz Radio. So this is a very organic progression from just, hanging out with friends, making some music, collecting this music, and then trying to figure out what is the best way to distribute this, instead of just everyone listening to each recording on their own. So we're going to interject here with a little bit of high-level infrastructure. This is a very basic setup. We're running on a single digital ocean droplet. That droplet has our HTTP server to host our website. We're all running Icecast and Liquidsoap. The files are stored there. So we're currently using Liquidsoap to basically just randomly play from a folder of songs, a folder of bumpers, kind of that you're listening to type stuff. And then we do have some shows that are scheduled, and I have my Liquidsoap script file to share. So that's kind of just at a high level what this is. So this is our script file. You can see, I remember that last Liquid Shop, there was some discussion about scheduling and using the switch. That is still something I'm exploring. But for the amount of content that we have, this is sufficient at this time. So this is kind of jumping into this kind of like philosophical shift, right? And the idea is that you now have the ability to create something, a radio station, as an artifact. And part of the reason that my friends and I really enjoy our radio station is that there's not a commitment to release. You don't have to say, okay, I have to upload this to Spotify, or this is the YouTube. This is something that we can just drop files into this radio station. And because of global distribution, our listeners and ourselves have access to this content and just as easily or more easily than some of these other larger platforms. We like this because there's an extensibility to it. You can add, fake commercials or real commercials. We have intention to include other artists, to build out additional show schedules. This radio station is very much in its infancy, so we're still exploring how we want to proceed. And then something else we've talked about is just the idea of a live broadcast. Growing up, there's always, the local radio station is doing an on-site, right? They're kind of at some grand opening or a store, and they're playing music live in that space. Very much similar to the events Pierre was hosting, something like this. Another reason that we like this a lot is because it's synchronous and communal listening, right? Now that we've, as a band, created this music, you also have people listening all to the same song at the same time. That is something that it's distinct from just going to Spotify on your own or going to YouTube on your own. It's a shared experience. Everybody's listening to the same song at the same time. That's important. And then something that we kind of are leaning on is that, we're kind of sidestepping licensing altogether just by using our own work. That is something that, were we to expand and, that's something homework on the list, but as of right now, it's a lot easier for us not to worry about that. continuing on with this model. So in New Orleans, we have a radio station called WWOZ, and it's an important organization in the city. It kind of brings together a lot of listeners. They're very closely affiliated with the organization that puts on New Orleans' Jazz Fest. And the way, when you listen to this radio station for a very long time, you get to know the show hosts, and you get to understand that what the importance of that entity, that organization, and the platform, the radio station itself, how important that is to the community, especially here in New Orleans. So that's kind of something that informs what we're trying to do, at least my own input into the project. Something that WWOZ does really well is they list out all of the shows that are happening in the city at a given time. That's something that we're interested in. But what stands out to me is that there's an acknowledgement and kind of this intention of building up that listener and artist community. And I guess maybe in contrast to some of the things that Pierre was saying, like it is aggressively inclusive to try to make sure that everybody is participant in this. So that's something that we're looking at. But back to the main ideas, radio station as artifact. There's this prior art. One example that I have is the Queens of the Stone Age record, Songs for the Deaf. But I was Googling this morning. There's plenty of full albums or individual tracks that kind of mimic or they have this idea that they've recorded DJ interstitials into the record, right? That's part of the piece. That there's like this radio component. Well, I think that Liquidsoap and kind of the technology as it stands, you have the ability where an artist can, instead of releasing an album, the friends and I that are working on this, you can release a radio station as a release, as its own thing. And an idea that I kind of glommed onto or think about a lot is the idea is infrastructure is art. So, maybe you're just making a record, maybe you're just making a song, but you could also be intentionally making a radio station or a website or a platform. And I have a personal example here. Some time ago, I recorded a piece of music, and the actual title of the piece is http myfreedownloads.info. And that's kind of, a riff or an idea on what is the piece, right? And if the title of it is resolvable to the piece, I really like to play with that boundary of what is the piece of art, what is the platform that it resides on. And if you're intentional about the whole thing, perhaps the whole thing is a statement. And, shouting out to Alexis and Marshall McLuhan, like in what ways are, taking advantage of and leveraging this open source technology, how much of that is your art, right? Like what you do and how you do is it, right? So that's kind of been big for me to chew on and think about as I'm working with this technology. So that's really fun. I really like the way that, there's things that are being defined differently. There's an ontology about like, what is a source and these kinds of things. It's very exciting. It really turns a lot of ideas up on its head. So room for growth, like what does this project mean? Like where are we going? So, I've been reading a lot and seeing a lot about HLS. Is that something I need? I don't know. I'm using IceCast right now. My primary profession is as an educator, teacher, high school. And I've done, I've studied computer science. That was my training, but more in a conceptual way. I don't out loud describe myself as a developer, let's say, right? So, some of my, yes, David, correct. The piece forwards you to the archive.org resolution. That's kind of, and is that glue? Would people care? I care. I'm enough. And I think the folks maybe here in this room care. So things like that, right? So something that I'm thinking about, TurboZone, I've described a little bit about the intention and kind of where it is, but where are we headed? So, my infrastructure is very bare bones. All of the MP3s are stored on the exact same machine that the Liquidsoap instance is running on, and that the IceCast server and the Apache server that hosts the website, it's just all one piece. It's very glued together with popsicle sticks, this kind of idea, right? So that's something that I'm looking to learn about and explore today, and just, in continuous. I've seen many people talk about the book. I have the book. I think I'm about 10 or 15 pages in, but I'm excited based on all the positive feedback. I'm excited to have it. And then what are we doing? We're trying to build out additional shows, incorporate additional artists. We're just trying to expand our community, right, to increase the relevance of this project. And then, something else that I've been kind of looking at and thinking about is like TV, this idea of, it's very easy to spin up this radio station, but then what happens if you have video content? And to me, I'm trying to like chase that idea of what it was like to watch MTV in the United States in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think that's just an odd time and a funny piece of art, and being able to use the technology to riff on that, or to make something that's like that, is an idea for me. And then an app for consumption. So once we've got this, some folks are comfortable going to turbozone.org and listening to the MP3 stream that's generated there. But as I said, when you're trying to hit your audience, the platform can be diverse. So maybe an iOS app that's, turbozone.org, just so people see it on their home screen. I really try to decrease the friction of having somebody access what we're doing. So I'm trying to think through that. So these are just like a loose checklist of things that I'm interested in. Yeah, the player, not trivial at all. And then this was just kind of like the Lagniappe extra slide of just, things, to the point of getting feedback from Liquidsoap users. Something that I think is funny that I wanted to share. I don't know if this is relevant to anyone, but I like this riff. I think it's a good idea. The company called Rolls makes FCC, this is in the United States, Part 15 transmitter, and it's effectively a beefed up version of one of those things that you put in your car so that your phone can, transmit to the FM radio. So, at my house, I'm running a FM transmitter, and let's say that I think my current frequency that I'm broadcasting on in my house is maybe 95.1. So I can tell people, yeah, turbozone.org, 95.1, right? Well, I'm not telling you the between the lines that you can only listen to that FM stream if you're like a half a block away from my home. But it's real, it's the truth, right? This is the kind of like jokes and things that I like. That, you've got this hyper-local FM signal that's just a block radius around my house, but, it's available around the world. That's the kind of stuff that is funny to me. Something else that my father works in emergency management. What are ways that you can use Liquidsoap to deploy continuously updating but live streaming a message in the event of an emergency, something like that. Something else I've been thinking about is just like a purpose-built device. So if I'm going out to an event where I want to be hosting, can I get like a Raspberry Pi where when I plug it in, it instantly hits IceCast, it's instantly recording. That's something I've been interested in. A personal project I've worked on is, except that's what my colleague Andy, that's one of the Ruff Cutz, and his daughter Zaza. Thank you for joining us. So the idea that, you might have a purpose-built, like a guitar pedal that's going to immediately be broadcasting to, like there's a radio station, they have all these Boss guitar pedals. There's the delay, there's the distortion, things like this. What if you had your radio station pedal, right? As soon as you plug it in, it's hit your Wi-Fi and someone can hit and listen to that stuff. So these are just, kind of those out in the weeds ideas that I'm thinking about. I've done this at my house where like my piano rig is set up to stream its own thing, and my guitar rig. So that's kind of where it's at. And the question I'm usually asking myself is, what kind of fun am I interested in having, and how does this technology support this? So I have a very high level, kind of interaction with Liquidsoap right now. I haven't gone as deep as I needed to, just because I'm kind of following my interest and the interest of my friends in the community at this time. And then something else that I just wanted to bring up is that in my experience as a school teacher, it's pretty trivial to set up a radio station. And I think that that's an empowering thing for students to experience, to have their own voice and to tell them that you're being, heard globally and that they can run it. And, it's a good entry point for computer science. I was teaching a computer class in Denver, and I helped those students set up a radio station. And, there was a lot of different jobs, right? Somebody had to just be a voice personality, but they were still in that room where the computer was running. So it gives you that ability to bleed over all this stuff. So I just wanted to say again, thank you to the Liquidsoap developers. I can only imagine what a labor of love this is, and have just been following and playing with this project for years. So, I see it and I greatly appreciate it. Life-changing, idea-changing. To the other presenters, I've already learned so much and found common interest, especially with Alexis. I love that presentation because that's kind of how I'm thinking as well. We're really shaking up what we're able to do thanks to this technology. I also wanted to say thank you to my colleagues and friends. So, all the boys in the band who are helping me make this music, and then, just other folks who are kind of helping us with this. And then just the listeners, right? The whole thing is that we're doing this thing, to be honest, because we like the attention of it, right? And then that there's some enjoyment that they're receiving as well. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Again, thank you for your time, and go listen to the music on turbozone.org.
Thank you, Nicholas. It was a great presentation. I think that something that grabbed my attention is when you said, can you do infrastructure as release? Like as musician, we want people to get to listen to our music. Sometimes you want to book a show, or you want to tell someone about your music. And back in the days, you would hand them a CD, but that doesn't exist. We don't have any media anymore. But I did that recently for one of my projects. I built. It was just a little website that goes straight into a player, but generally speaking, I think what you're touching here that's very interesting is that technology is fluid and accessible now. We have the cloud, we have so many like hosting solutions to get our stuff out, and we don't need to be a big corporation to have something that functions and scales to a lot of users. And it makes it exciting to think about creative and artistic way of using technology. And that's always been a foundational element. Back in the days, we had this guy who was. The reason we have Clock in Liquidsoap is because we had a guy who was streaming on Icecast 20 years ago, birds recording from an isolated island, I think in Northern Europe, and the connection was bad, and sometimes it would disconnect, and we needed a better way to isolate the two situations. So we've had people send UDP data across the world from Japan to France to measure and to listen to disruption on the network. Yeah, all this stuff is always amazing. So thank you for your participation and your presentation. That really factors into all these things.
I'm sorry, I just want to add to Nicholas, who I heard with pleasure, is that there is a philosophical aspect of listening to music in many cultures. For example, Nietzsche's first book was called The Birth of Tragedy from Music, and Schopenhauer, who Nietzsche was influenced by a lot, considered the music the most intimate expression of God language or some sort. And also in Indian music, there is a tradition to treat a listener with as much importance as a performer, because listening considered to be as much a creative act as playing music. So there's a lot of underestimation sometimes about listening to stuff, and to make it as a sort of an act. Sorry guys, I'm mute again.
No, that was great. I'm really enjoying. Nicholas, you want to give one last word before we move to the next speaker?
Yeah, that was it. Just to your point, me and my friends, when people say, what does the band sound like? It's very handy and helpful to say, go to turbozone.org. There's no, go listen to this on Spotify. That is all thanks to Liquidsoap. So thank you so much.
Thank you for